Welcome back to the Connection Program. This is Lesson 14, Relating. Relating brings together jump-off points and speaking from emotion. Jump-off points are pretty easy when you just focus on facts or really basic short stories. Where jump-off points start to become very powerful is when you can take a topic or a story that somebody's telling you and take it and relate to the emotional side of it, not just the factual side of it or whatever. So, what emotion? Start by asking yourself what emotion people are expressing when they tell you something. She was always late when she picked me up from school. Resentment, frustration. It was the first time I ever received a standing ovation for a performance. Joy, success, working for something and it paying off, pride. Then you want to relate to that emotion. So you relate to the resentment or the frustration with someone close to you with a story of your own. Relate to the elation of being successful at something that you worked long and hard for. It doesn't have to actually be about your parents or school or performance or receiving applause. It just has to match the emotion that goes along with it. So it could be about your father never telling you that he was proud or working hard to finish at the top of your class. For example, when I was a teenager, my dog died and my dad made me bury it in the backyard. I always thought it was kind of screwed up that he made me do that. Yeah, it's weird growing up and looking back and realizing that some of the stuff that your parents did probably wasn't totally normal or healthy. Now the response has no factual basis on the first story. The first story is about burying a dog. The second story is about growing up and how their perspective with their parents changes. But as you notice, they totally make sense. And not only do they make sense, but the person is connecting with the first person on an emotional level. Like it's actually a very interesting and powerful thing to respond with. And it's the type of response that will get somebody to open up and get conversations to a much deeper level. Another example. When I campaigned for Ron Paul, I stood out in the blizzard in New Hampshire for an entire afternoon. It was horrible, but I loved it. I once walked 15 minutes through a raging blizzard to feed my girlfriend's cat while she was out of town. It sucked, but I guess sometimes some things are more important than freezing your ass off. This one actually does have a factual resemblance. They're both about freezing somewhere, but it's about sacrifice. You could easily respond with, well, actually, this would be an example of a bad response that a lot of people would do. So the first one is, I campaigned for Ron Paul. I stood in a blizzard in New Hampshire for an entire afternoon. It was horrible, but I loved it. A bad response, but that a lot of people would do, is they would say, oh yeah, I was in Montreal when it got down to -40 once. It really sucked. That, on a factual level, it is basically the exact same thing. On an emotional level, it is completely disconnected. Because one person is talking about sacrifice and bearing pain and a burden for something, but loving it and doing it for a worthy cause. The second person is just talking about, oh yeah, blizzards suck. It keeps things on a very superficial and shallow level. Whereas when you talk about, I bared through a blizzard just to feed my girlfriend's cat, and it's because I really cared about her, and it was just something that I felt I had to do. That relates. It's about making sacrifice. It's about caring about something. It's about dealing with pain or a burden, despite and actually liking it and feeling good about it. And so that's where it relates. That's where it's powerful. So your exercise is to relate to the stories below on an emotional level. What emotion are they expressing? Write out your stories in the response below.